Hello and welcome to Pardon the Interception. This week with myself, Lee, and my
Me, Nick.
co-host, Nick. Conrad had some real life to deal with this week, so instead you can have two of us ambling our way through the games. So as ever, let's start with the GFL. So the first game we have to look at is the Toronto Stars at the Ventura Wildcats. A few familiar names we see here. Nick, what jumps out about this apart from obviously us proving once and for all again that the GMs don't just win, even though they run the game?
They've got to throw in the odd loss here and there just to make it look a little bit more legitimate. Now, the Wildcats, I believe, went into this game a game behind in the division, so it's a big game for them because if they lose this game, 2 games behind is going to be very tough to catch up for the last few games of the season. So they came out all guns blazing, good passing offense, a little bit of running there, and the defense did a real job on the Stars offense there. So defense of the Wildcats looks very good. Puts them on the same record as the Stars as well. So yeah, very impressive performance from the Wildcats there.
Good way of talking around the fact you didn't choose this game just because a DT got MVP.
I notice it more if they've got a face, you see. So
Right, the second game we got is the Stratford Steelers at the Chasm City Circle, and what to me would be a bit of a shock defeat, as Mark is one of the powerhouses of the GFL, and the Steelers had been cruising so far this season.
yeah, much like the previous game we've looked at, this is another top 2 sort of battle, and the Circle have really come out on top in this game. A lot of rushing yards I see there, and stop the Steelers' offense in this game as well. And they've really put the sword to them to some extent. So big statement this one.
And how often do you see an offensive tackle that gets the MVP?
Almost never. It's very rare you see any offensive lineman get MVP. So he's done some work there.
I wonder if he has the showman attribute. No, he does not. Okay, and then looking around the rest of the GFL, do you want to quickly talk us through these stats?
Yep. It was mostly a bit of a passing week this week in the GFL. So we've got 2 quarterbacks featured here from the Hawks and the Dragons, both passing for over 600 yards. And the very consistent Death Valley Black Knights have wide receiver picking up 5 touchdowns and 322 yards there to sort of cement their position at the top of their division.
Okay. Moving on to the Atlantic, start off with the Outlaws at the Triumph Spitfires, which is a hotly contested division. And a complete drubbing here with Coach Thompson's Spitfires over the Outlaws. I don't think the result is a massive shock, but I think that a lot of coaches were expecting this game to be significantly closer. Nick?
Yeah, we certainly wanted to see what the Outlaws could do this season. I believe they had quite a close game last week, and this week was one of the ones where we'd see whether they were contenders potentially for the playoffs or not. I think the Spitfires have been underestimated a little bit this season because they started off not on fire and lost the odd game here and there, and this shows both that the Outlaws maybe don't have enough to compete with the Spitfires just yet, and also that the Spitfires are still here and still well in with a chance of taking down this conference.
Okay. And the other game we have in the Atlantic is the Magpies at your Scorpions. So a close loss. Nick, as being a coach in this, I'll let you talk us through.
Yeah, this was going to probably decide the division, or at least push us towards a decision in the division with a return leg at Witchville. I feel like I really needed to win this one, but I feel like we did quite a lot on quite a lot better than I possibly expected on defense. Offense hasn't done too badly, but yeah, I'm fairly happy with how the game played out. But we've just not stopped them when we really needed to. So yeah, big win for the Magpies, and congrats to them. They march on 6-0. We're going to have to do some work in the next couple of weeks to try and make the playoffs.
Okay. Then let's look at the best of the rest in the Atlantic. So the Aztecs having a bit of a consolation of having a very strong passing week, and the Kings getting quite a lot of yardage as well and squeaking out a win. Despite these stats, I believe that the Aztecs are out of playoff contention and the Kings have an outside chance.
Yeah. The Aztecs pass, like Webb to Peter, has always been like a strong combination in the league. Unfortunately, the Aztecs defense hasn't really put up the same numbers as these two. And the Kings, with this win, keeps them in with a shout at the playoffs. So yeah, they've come back fairly strongly the last couple of weeks. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on them.
Okay. On to the Big Sky. So some names that I don't think we've talked about much before: the Mount Dora Massive and the Port Royal Buccaneers. Quite a statement win here on the road by the Massive. If I remember rightly, I think Martin Benson was in one of the other leagues at one point in time. I know that Richard Klein has played in the A and the GFL, so two seasoned coaches here. And with how the start to Richard's season, possibly an upset result at home.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were expecting Richard's team to continue to do well. I think they've done very well the past two seasons, and maybe it's just a glimmer that Davies isn't quite what he used to be on the in the running back position. It's a massive win for the Massive. It's a big statement away at the Buccaneers, and they've done a fantastic job here, and that's a real statement. I think it puts them both at 4-2. So the return fixture will be a very interesting one.
Okay. And the other game we have to look at is the Stormers at the Titans. So a home win here for the Titans, putting up slightly more yards in an impressive battle through the air, through the air here. And despite a passing dominated game, a running back getting the MVP award.
Yeah, this was another one where, the Stormers with a win could branch away, get a couple of wins ahead of the Titans, and the Titans have put in an impressive performance here. A lot of passing yards, as you say, and yeah, interesting one. The running back getting the MVP award, but I guess he got 3 touchdowns, so maybe deserved it.
I assume this is the show of the style of offense where you have the passing unit to move the ball into the red zone, then you just get the running back to punch it in. So the mechanics of the MVP with a player that has scored 3 touchdowns is always going to be weighted a little bit higher. Okay.
Yeah.
And the second game we've got is no, that was the second game. Best of the rest. Did the Swarming Giant Hornet the Swarming Giant Hornets, one of my favourite names to try and pronounce, having a great game, passing to everyone's favourite wide receiver, running back trips, and I really need to look into what they've done here to get this to work. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, every week it feels like every week we talk about trips, and I think maybe there was 1 or maybe 2 weeks where we didn't talk about him, but he seems to be a bit of an enigma in this league where he's getting yards. It's not like the odd game; it's every game, and it's a lot of yards every game. And he's I imagine he's pretty difficult to defend against. So yeah, it's it looks like they've gone marching on with Calgary and Tripson in tandem, and then we've got Rasmussen from the Fremont Fire just running all over the Norwich Sun Devils. But Rasmussen is what looks like a very good running back. 11.24 yards per carry is a lot.
Yeah, for those regular viewers, we know we talk about trips and a lot, and I think the reason for it is, as Nick alluded to, we've both been in the game a while, and you see occasional games where a running back will get a lot of passing yards, but how often Tripson's doing it, and the fact that I think he's still leading the league in reception yards, it's a bit odd. He's must have found a new way to attack with him, and kudos to him. New ways
Yeah.
are usually very successful.
Yeah, it's always nice to see something different being done.
On to the Continental, we have the Rabid Bay Beavers at the St. Louis Spartans. Not a playoff contention game, but one that on paper looked like a close game, and just wanted to mix up some of the leagues to look at some of the other battles we see. A low-scoring affair in what looks to be a defense-led battle with quite a few turnovers here, and the Rabid Beavers setting a new team record for 6 field goals attempted. Nick, what did you make of this week?
Yeah, it's a good win for the Beavers. Spartans look like they're trying to build on something and see where it goes. So they might be an interesting one to keep an eye on through to the end of the season and start our next season and see where they end up. But yeah, good win for the Beavers, and as you say, interesting 6 field goal attempts. Sometimes you feel like that would have happened earlier on in the careers of the Rabid Beavers, but yeah, it's an interesting stat to pop up.
Then we've got the Virginia Zulus at the Winterfell Westies. Why do I choose games that I have difficulty in pronouncing? Once again, not a top of the table battle, but an interesting one here, and with coach Gary Lyon taking a home field win in a close battle that had quite a large number of yards, but not a huge amount of points.
Yeah, there's a potential game where the Westies could slip up, and being on 3-2, you want to get to that 4-2 and start having a small bit of a cushion when it comes to the run-in over the next few weeks. So, and as we know, you still have to get the wins on the board. And the Zulus are perfectly good opposition, and they could easily, on a different day, have taken this game. So to put enough one in the win column is great for the Westies, and the Zulus probably shouldn't come out this too downhide because it's a good performance.
Okay, and on to the best of the rest from the Continental. And what's this? We see Arctic Badgers players, and they're not called Strom. What is this?
He is the monster running back, the real monster running back at the Arctic Badgers. Those numbers are something most of us can only dream of. 382 yards of rushing and 7 touchdowns. He's an offense on his own, pretty much. Yeah.
I believe this isn't even the first week we've seen him put up an average of nearly 10 yards a carry or plus.
No, he's definitely been up there. If Strom's not doing it, he's doing it, and he certainly looks like the future for the Arctic Badgers there. Them being 6-0, that's ominous for the rest of the teams in the league.
And then we've got a wide receiver at the Hangers putting up 300 yards and 4 TDs. Always a good week out. And then a defensive end, eight sacks. Ugh. That is a large number of sacks. You do not want to be giving up that amount of sacks, especially to a single player.
Yeah, I think that game was close as well, so that might well have been the difference between a win and a loss for the Eagles.
Have we seen that player before? Do we know if it's a monster defensive end, or do we think it could be a weaker left tackle?
The name doesn't ring a bell, so one to keep an eye on for sure. Might have just been a good matchup for him, and he's got a lot of sacks. You certainly don't walk around getting 8 sacks without being good. So,
Okay, on to the Delta, the league that supposedly I know the most about. Let's look at the Wyverns and the Zeppelin. Not a top of the table battle, but um, probably one of the closest games of this week. And looking at two teams that are rebuilding a little bit here, and it's got to feel good for Coach Mullin to put up 500 passing yards, and then also not too disheartening for Coach Clark here to only lose by a single point. Both of the offenses seem to be firing somewhere, so there is some ground there to build up on, and the defenses didn't have the worst day out, despite there being 71 points scored in the game.
Yeah, looking at the stats, it looks like the defenses are in, as you say, there's a lot of points, but the defense is looking reasonable form there, because there are 5 turnovers each. We've got defensive end getting the MVP award as well. You've got 5 sacks and 6 interceptions in the game. So yeah, like I think both teams can come out of this looking good for the run in, and certainly feeling positive about where their teams are going.
The other game we have is the Sunblazers at the Silverbacks. So looking at the records and knowing how strong Shanklin are, I was expecting this game to be a complete and utter blowout, but the other coach Brown put in a blinding game plan and came very, very close to upsetting the Sunblazers, which would have kept this a very interesting. If the Sunblazers had lost, this particular division would have been even more interesting than it is. It's still a 3-horse race. The Silverbacks might have been able to open it to a 4-horse race, but as anyone that listens to the Meteor will know, Jeff speaks to his brother regularly about the team, and Dave has this ethos that I'm going to pass it deep, and I'm going to try and score more points than you. So the writing's on the wall. He's just going to lob it down, and someone's going to try and catch it. Eugene and Batman just had a great week here. Not really much more I can say about this game.
No, it's one of those wins where, whilst it looks ominous for the Sunblazers, they've got to be happy to have come through this, because, as I sort of mentioned earlier, every game is a test in these leagues, and you've still got to put the W's on the board, and getting the win here is important, and they've got the win, and a couple of rushing. So yeah, looks like the win was very helpful for the Sunblazers.
Yes, and then moving on to the best of the rest. My running back, Gold, he's doing pretty well at the minute. He is running absolutely rampant. The Rogues did not manage to stop him at all. If I do win the division, he's going to be the horse that carries us over the line. The Hornets also having a good day out as well, managing to get a good amount of running yards, get a good number of sacks, and get a win against a underpowered Metros and a rebuilding Metros, but a win is a win.
Yep.
Okay, on to the E. So we have the Wichita Wranglers and the should that be Odessa Lions? No, it is Odense.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I thought the same earlier when I was putting the slides together, but
yeah, there is an Odessa in either this league or a different league.
I think so. I could be wrong, but yeah, it certainly rings a bell. This game was one I kind of had an eye on from last week, actually, because the Lions have been picking things up the last couple of weeks. I can't remember whether I think it was them that's got the low motivation this season. I can't remember for sure, but they started off the season fairly slow, and the Wranglers rushed out to 5-0 this season and were top of the division, and Zane knows what he's doing. So it's an interesting one from the Lions' perspective, because now they're 3-3. They've got every chance of getting a playoff spot, and their defense looks mean. I mean, the Wranglers have won fairly well throughout the season, and they've just shut down that offense completely. So Lions are one to watch.
Then we also have the Incarnate Chaos at the Rockall Knights. Nick, talk us through this.
So this was an interesting one from the point of view of the Chaos needed to win this really to keep the pressure up. 3-2 is a position where you want to be pushing on to 4-2, and obviously the Knights at 2-3 will be wanting to even up with the Chaos and get into the mix. So the Chaos came here and did the business. They it's not a high scoring game. The defenses have done their job. Certainly the Chaos defense has really shut down the Rockall Knights offense here, and got the win, as we say. And the wins are always earned. So Grimstone with an MVP award shows that the defense is a good one there in Chaos.
Okay, and then let's look at the best of the rest. So, Nick, do you want to talk us through the stats? The stats here.
So here we have the Sharks picking up a win, probably one they'd expect to win against the Montreal Monarchs. Their quarterback Hayne has 548 yards and 3 touchdowns, so good performance from him. The Gamblers had an easier matchup this week. Nash getting a lot of yards and 4 touchdowns keeps them in with a sliver of hope in the playoff run. 3-3, you can put a run together of 4 wins off at the end of the season and end up in the mix. And then finally, Kimbrel of the Spen Valley Tomahawks getting 8 touchdowns this week against the Aurora Tigers, and that's a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, I always say it's that 4th win that makes me feel a little edgy. So that 4th loss that makes me feel a little edgy. 7-3 is going to make you the playoffs most years. 6-4 sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. Right, got through those games pretty quickly. So then I'll surprise Nick with something else as well. Should we quickly look at the stand-ins for each of the leagues and see if there's anything that jumps out?
Go for it.
So looking at the GFL stand-ins, I think the most interesting, there's 3 divisions that jump out at me. You've got the AFC South that has 2 teams competing for the number 1 slot. The NFC East and the NFC South both seem fairly competitive for who can take the number one slot. Looks like the Wildcats might take the East because of the divisional record, but there's obviously still 2 more divisional games to play. But having that extra divisional win definitely helps. Anything that jumps out at you here?
I think you've covered the bases. The Circle and the Wildcats wins this week, as we looked at earlier, put them in the driving seat for their divisions. The return fixtures will be interesting ones, but they certainly look like the 2 teams to beat over there. From what else we've seen in the league, the Mustangs and the Black Knights have both looked very strong. I'm not sure whether we've actually looked at the Wraiths at all this season, but
why would we ever look at Dave Russell's team?
Yeah, I mean, it's down to Comrade. He normally chooses the G game, so
true. Let's have a look at the Atlantic. Nick, I'll let you lead on this.
Well, the CFC looks fairly locked in. I mean, I think the Sharks play the Stampede this week. That's a big game. I play the Islanders this week, and that will probably paint most of the picture for the CFC side of things, because teams will, unless the Stampede beat the Sharks, in which case that division is wide open. Whoever wins out of the Islanders and Scorpions are in the driving seat for a wild card spot. On the MFC side of things, apparently there's this Mariners team run by someone called Lee Wood that's doing quite well. They've managed to rack up 6. Redcoats got themselves back into the playoff contention. And then we're looking at Blues, Outlaws, whether they can come back from a defeat this week, Nighthawks and Rapiers to see who comes out on top over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, nothing more I can add to that. So let's look at the Big Sky. So looking at this, a lot of these divisions seem very, very open, especially the PFC West down here. Third place team at 4-2. Actually, some very, very competitive divisions here.
Yeah, I think it shows that Titans Stormers game how much it mattered to both teams as to where they are. As you just said, they're both on 4-2 now, so certainly an interesting one. And if we look at the PFC North, I know the Rivets are always strong, but you've still got the Maroons and the Surfers there on 5-1 and 4-2. That'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on as well.
I'm not used to seeing so many third place teams on positive records.
Yeah, there's almost every division's there to play for. You could say the PFC South is probably the least competitive, but even there, like Warriors put a couple of wins together or beat the Eagles, and that's wide open. So yeah, a lot to play for. It's really interesting. Certainly be keeping an eye on this.
Look at the C. Right, Nick, where jumps out to you on this one?
So we see the Badgers top of their division. Badgers and Monarchs look good. Black Mountain Thunderbirds always up there, and they've almost locked up their division already as of the Monarchs. The UFC side of things looks a little bit more interesting. Trojans and Westies battling it out. Classics pretty much have the division locked up there. And then we've got Venom and Destruction, and then the Bombers. And the Angels have an outside chance at the Bombers, but I think the Bombers have looked pretty strong this season. So, yeah, this one looks a little bit it doesn't look quite as open as the B. Looks a little bit more like the A. But there's a few divisions there that are all to play for.
Okay. And the Delta, the one that I've probably stared at the most. Some interesting divisions and some not so interesting divisions here. So I was talking in the games about the Shanklin game and the Silverbacks of how the VFC North. So if the Shanklin went to 4-2 and the Silverbacks went to 2-4, the Silverbacks probably aren't competing, but that would have made a world of difference to that, because I think Shanklin are going to take the division. A lot of people think that the Fury are going to win out, and that involves some games at Shanklin. So that will then put them atop. But we will wait and see. I think the injuries to Phil's team are going to hurt him there. The Colts look like they're probably going to lock up this division. I think they just beat York. VFC South, I think this division's mine solely because the Rogues have a much harder end to the season than me. We'll see. The Katanas, they're going to win that division. The Robber Barons, the little team that could, 6-0, they're rocking their way into the playoffs. The biggest battle I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out is the Lone Stars at the Warriors. The spreadsheets I put together at the start of the season had the Warriors winning the division. The Lone Stars managed to squeak a win off of them in a tight game. We will see where that goes to. Nick, anything that jumps out?
No, I think you've covered most of it, and you know a lot more about the D than I do. The only question is, how good are the Patriots? Because we've seen them crop up every so often in some stats. Do they have a chance in the VFC North?
Yes, there is actually a chance the VFC North puts two teams into the playoffs. They could have two wildcards come out of that division, or the Patriots can take it. I think they're actually stronger than their results show. Right, on to the Empire. Right. This looks like some nice open divisions here. There's only one undefeated team.
Yep.
Yeah.
It looks that way. And from what we've seen, they're not necessarily the team that are one of the two favoured teams, because the High Hunters and the Kings have been the two teams that have been talked about the most, probably. And we've seen them racking up big scores. As you saw, the Lions beating the Wranglers has put the BFC West wide open, because the Russians are still in it. They got a good win this week. The Thundering Herd lost again this week, and the Sharks put up a big win over the Monarchs, so that the PFC West is well open. Chaos getting the win against the Knights has kept the PFC South well open. Yeah, almost everything's there to play for, really, isn't it? You could say the BFC North is probably done and dusted, but other than that, almost anyone of the top two in any division could still take their division.
Yeah. Right. Nick, any parting thoughts before we come to a close?
Only that if you do want to hear Comrade this week, he is on the Atlantic Avenue. So if you want to go check that out, you can hear the dulcet tones of Comrade Williams and Lee Jason Elkins talking about the Atlantic.
And I believe Comrade also goes through a little bit of the origin story of how we three met.
Yeah. Briefly, yes.
Yeah, how we met 25 years ago now.
Something like that.
Anyway, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.